I had a wonderful opportunity to come out to Lake Keepit and do some sailplaning with a good friend of mine, Cliffy Holmes. I call it paragliding on steroids. The whole idea of coming out here was to catch as many thermals as we could and cover as much ground as we could and try and learn a lot more in a short period of time about how thermals work, how clouds are formed, where to find the lift, where to go, where to look at the ground. So stay tuned and I hope we all learn something. Okay, primarily why I'm here is to find out how to catch thermals. I'm up with our captain Dave Holmes. So same basic principles apply with paragliding compared to sailplaning or gliding. Is that obviously we've got to try and stay on the core. We've got to try and stay on that sweet spot. We're looking for the center of it. We're going to try and float on top of that. This gauge here on my right is basically a thermal sniffer. You see the red dots on here? They're telling us where the good lift was last time. The beauty of that is we can adjust our circle in order to sit on top of the thermal. You can see now we're going to come through a little bit of a sinky section. Audio drops away with the vario. Now we're going to come back in more into the bubbles here and you'll hear the vario starting to climb again. So a beautiful little incorporation having the vario and the GPS linked together. Makes it easy, the thermal sniffer. So if you do hit lift, I like to do a little bit of a left turn and a right turn to try and map out where you think that core might be. We've just pulled into this thermal, we hit good lift and we did a right hand turn. The lift seemed to improve and then we fell out of the edge of the core. So now we've turned back and we're heading back around to the left. So we started with a right hand circle, now we're heading around in a left hand circle. So we just take on the opposite side and it's working. The same basic principles going towards thermaling in a paraglider. If the core has a lot stronger lift in it, it's a good idea to wind it up. Get some G-forces happening in your harness. That'll load your wing up and keep your wing inflated. So if you do hit the bumps on the outside, then your wing stays inflated. So obviously trying to keep those controls as smooth as possible and as little movements as possible is best, but it comes down to reaction time. The faster you can work out if the glider's pitching, yawing or rolling, the faster you can get onto it and the less you have to do to save it. So leaving base now, you can hear the vario's definitely got a descending tone going on. A nice little map of clouds out in front. You've got to read from halfway up. So we're at about 5,500 feet here. If we get down to about 2,500 feet, then we're looking down to look at the topography to find out where the thermals might be triggering from. Once you're halfway up, you start looking at the clouds and there you map. They call it upside down chess. Dave's found a resident thermal here. I can see below me that the mountain has a lot of rocks hanging out of it. Now that sun beats down on the ground and obviously this is a solar sport. And as that sun heats those rocks up, it releases latent heat into the air, which then expands and climbs. So we're over what is called a resident trigger, one of Dave's little hunting grounds when he goes looking for thermals. And you can hear all the way around in 360s, that vario is beeping. So we've left Cloudbase and been on glide now for, 5 minutes. And now we've got clouds that are lower than us in the foreground. Okay, what we're trying to do now is, because we're higher than Cloudbase, is ridge saw the side of the cloud. It can work. That cloud has entity, it has structure, it has mass. The wind will hit that and deflect over the top, exactly the same as ridge soaring. So currently we're ridge soaring a cloud. How cool is that? It's sort of been a childhood dream to actually go up and be able to fly around the cloud. Like everyone sees it from the ground and looks up and says, wouldn't it be great to stick your hand out the window and high five that cloud? Well, that's what we're doing. Okay, we're getting low there for a little while, so obviously in a paraglider we're trying to keep a landing field with an easy glide. In a sailplane it's a little bit harder. What's the glide ratio on this, Cliff?
45 to 1.
This glide ratio is 45 to 1. In a paraglider we're looking at 10 and we're looking at about 15 knots. Currently we're cruising at about 70 knots. The scenario in a paraglider seems to be never leave lift because of our airspeed, and it takes so long in order to go from one cloud to another cloud that sometimes you find when you get there the cloud is in decay and you hit sink underneath it. So the beauty of a sailplane is that if you can see a cloud starting to form and it has nice crisp top on it, a nice flat base, then you can just head straight over to it and be there in no time at all. Push the nose down, do 100, 120 knots. You'll be there in 12 times faster than you'll ever be there in a paraglider. So quite often you find when you get to cloud base, you hit cloud suck. And that's a bit of a phenomenon. That's where the gas turns to a liquid, and that chemical reaction causes heat. And with that heat, the air wants to rise faster. We don't seem to have that situation today, but it's called cloud suck. The closer you get to clouds, the higher the climb rate. Not so bad in a sailplane because we can easily fly out from the side of the cloud. But in a paraglider, with our slow forward airspeed, it is quite possible to get sucked up into the clouds. So obviously in a paraglider, we're going to aim for the edge of the cloud as we get closer and closer. There's also another phenomenon called cloud streaks. So whenever you can see them lining up in a straight line, then you can make a beeline straight towards them, and usually you can follow them straight and maintain height. There's the core. So what we're looking to do now is tighten up that turn in the back side of that core so that we can head back with some speed and puncture the edge of that thermal and take it for whatever it's worth. We're nearly at base. Here is Dave now clicking into that core, banking it up so that we can stay on the one spot. It's amazing with a bank angle of 45, maybe 50 degrees, this thing's still climbing 10 knots at the moment. I know if I tried that in a paraglider, I'd be spiraling towards the ground. We're trying to do flat turns in a paraglider. So over to our left here is a blue hole. Obviously, that area isn't working at the moment. So what we do is we circumnavigate that blue hole. You quite often find you'll find lift in a straight line, and then you'll do like a honeycomb or a beehive diagonal to catch that next wave of lift, and then you'll straighten up again. So it ends up being a little bit of a zigzag pattern. Just as demanding as flying a paraglider, obviously not as much wind in your hair, and the visibility is a big difference. I can see everything that's happening up. I can see a couple of sailplanes below us, but I can only see them below us when we're on a good bank angle. Apart from that, my visibility is up and forward. I can see right and left and look over the edge, but I can't see down. Interesting.
Pull the airspeed back. Lead with the right foot.
Right, yeah.
My aircraft.
Your aircraft. It's a little bit harder than it looks. I'm finding it a little bit of a knack, peeling off that speed and washing it out into the three-dimensional picture so that we can bleed it into the thermal. Usually the call after I've done that is my aircraft. So we're just heading out on glide now. Got another couple of clouds lined up. Always looking up, mapping out our course and direction by looking at where the clouds are, where those flat bases are. One thing I am noticing is that these big suspension arms that we've got on each side of our glider called wings actually do all the suspension for us. In a paraglider, all those lines are tight and there's no giving them. So that when we hit sink or when we hit lift, all of a sudden, then we find that we get collapses. In this thing, the suspension just takes up and the wings take all that bump out. Another big difference I'm finding from being in a paraglider to being in a sailplane is I'm not out there in the wind. So all I could have before was like a popper or an apple or a muesli bar, but now I can have shapes. They don't even blow away. How good's this? Some dip would be nice. When it's time to go home, it's time to go home. So same problem we have as paragliding is it's very hard to go to the toilet unless you have a condom catheter or some means of a nappy or something like that. So Dave's incontinence is kicking in now, so we're going to head back and have a little land. Here we are, final glide to Lake Keepit Airport. I hope this little tips and hints session has been helpful. They work good, don't they, those air brakes? Yeah. Excellent. Drop out of the sky. Grazed it in there, Cliffy. All the way up to the hangar. I'll pay it. Sounds like a rap song. Ah, nice one, Cliffy. You're a legend.
Done.
What an awesome thing to do.